So if you want to access something later, you can just go there. You don't need to worry about getting everything. Okay.
Great. Perfect.
All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And give me one second. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, well, it's so good to see so many friends and family here. A friend is considered to be a favorite companion or someone who you find agreeable. Usually friends complement each other and make you feel part of something bigger. I choose to believe that science and spirituality are friends, and that when religion presents a lesson, you might just find physical qualities in nature that agree with or complement that teaching. I'm Emmy Krone for those of you who don't know me, and I'm sort of a math and science geek. But for me, it's not always been this way. Much like every other child, I put lots of blind trust and belief into my community environment to have a better understanding of the world. I was under the impression that Santa was real, but I also thought that global warming was a hoax. I believed in the primitive Christian creation archetype. Can you all see my PowerPoint also?
Since it's loading. Oh, there it is.
Oh, yep.
Okay, there. I believed in the primitive Christian creation archetype. I worried that my friends who didn't attend church were going to hell. And specifically, I remember in the 4th grade, a presenter came in and showed us a video of how the science or the solar system and the planets and the universe was formed. And I was completely dumbfounded. It seemed to be so real, but how was I supposed to believe this and then abandon everything I learned in church? And that was the first time I really began to question my faith. And as I grew, so did my understanding of the world, and I soon became to have an immense reverence for the universe. But before I teach you how viewing science and spirituality as friends compelled me to live a different life, I should clarify that my intention is not to convince you of anything. I'm still so young and naive, and I have so much to learn. So I have no expectations that anyone will blindly agree with me as a child without experience would. So to begin, you and I only exist as we are right now in this very moment. The obvious, everyone knows that. But if we take a look at this light cone here on the right, that that is utilized in Einstein's theories of special and general relativity, you can start to piece together how an individual might experience time. There are 4 distinct parts to the light cone I want to emphasize. So hopefully you can see that there are like 2 cone-shaped halves that come together in the middle at their peak, kind of. And so the top cone is the outer path of emission photons, and that just describes how there are several uncertain futures ahead of us. And then the bottom cone is the inner path of absorption photons, which is our past and a singular inner reality that has already occurred. And the connecting point in the middle is the position of the observer, which is you and me and everything else. And the space that this position takes up is a singular point of space. So after seeing this, one might think this kind of looks like an hourglass, and you might be right. The light cone and the hourglass have very similar mechanics in that above us we have an uncertain future, below us we have a certain past, and in the present we have grains of sand or time flowing through us. To add on, I kind of think that this looks like Jung's model of the psyche, which is over here on the right. And I think it's kind of remarkable that on the top portion, we have an outer world, which is similar to the outer path of emission photons. And below ourselves, we have an inner world, which is similar to our inner path of absorption photons. And here on this model, we also have a shadow, which is comparable to our past or our memories. So now the 4th component of the light cone is the hypersurface of the present. I hope you can see this plane that runs through the middle of the 2 cones. So that plane will never exist in your reality because you will never be somewhere or someplace else than the present. That being said, as the models of time show, the present is only a single fleeting moment where every moment brings new change and new particle movement. Thus, you are being changed constantly. You are different now than you were 5 seconds ago, and by the time I'm done with this presentation, you will be fundamentally different than you were when you logged onto this meeting. You are only you right now. So with that in mind, I want to prove to you why you need to go with the flow, accept change, and live in the moment. When change is always happening, it's so vital that we invite change, because when we are trying to avoid or stop change, a great deal of hurt occurs. It's especially disheartening when people reject change, considering that there's an entire political ideology whose textbook definition is adverse to change. Their main concern is to maintain or safeguard. And sometimes we reject change out of concern that it might disrupt our personal contentment in life, despite having the potential to uplift someone out of their discomfort. I'm giving the example of people complaining about lockdown while people are dying of COVID. Similarly, it's important to keep in mind that acceptance is not saying okay to things like systemic racism. Here I have the example of redlining and someone saying, I'm fine with it, I recognize the situation, but not doing anything about it because it may not affect someone. Acceptance is recognizing the truest reality of a situation and taking action upon that revelation. And so I have systemic racism here and taking action to prevent that or stop that. So lastly, when we hold on to our future or past anxieties, we lose touch with all that we have, which is the present. This verse from James 4:13 through 15 addresses those who are perhaps filled with worry about anything but the present. It states, now listen, you who say, tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business and make money. But you do not even know what will happen in the present, happen tomorrow. What is your life? You're a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it's the Lord's will, we will live. Acceptance and going with the flow is not only a fundamental principle of many religions, but also a very necessary piece to our well-being according to the physics of this universe. When we learn to welcome and encourage positive change, we can learn to love others and ourselves better. And then earlier I addressed briefly particle movement, and I want to tell you how this relates to compassion. So according to like every natural law in the universe, if in one moment you have an initial condition pertaining to particles or any entity and its information, then you should be able to calculate what will happen to those entities at any point in time. So if you were to conduct an experiment 2 times with the exact same initial conditions, you can expect to see the exact same results. This also aligns with Newton's third law, which declares that for any action being the initial condition, there's an equal and opposite reaction being whatever happened as a result of those conditions. From this, I can conclude that given someone else's exact circumstances and genetics or exact initial conditions, you would make the exact same decisions. Taking the wise steps of imagining yourself in the shoes of someone you despise results in compassion, because we often like to think that people of differing beliefs deserve to be villainized. Though sometimes compassion can be really hard. After January 6th, my rush to judgment thought was that these people do not deserve compassion. Why does this deserve compassion? But what good does that thought do? It's pointless. After thinking about this for a while, I realized that instead of whining about their actions and solving nothing, you and I need to take action to reverse the evil thinking and lies that have infiltrated the minds of so many people. And of course, the idea that your genetics and situation in life is what compels you to make certain decisions is not an exoneration for immoral behavior. Our futures are always and forever uncertain, and our stories are just unfolding as we flow through life. By doing something evil, you still embody the problem and you have to take responsibility. So building off of this, I want to talk about the probable existence of something greater than us. Through my research, I found lots of evidence that there exists some force that we'll never be able to fully comprehend. I appreciate Taoism because in this Eastern religion, God is the Tao or the way. And I think when you strip down the human and personal characteristics of a lot of other gods, like the Christian God, and you compare it to the Tao, it's indistinguishable. So the first piece of evidence that I have that might endorse this claim is that there exists that endorses this claim that there might be something greater than us, is emergence, is the mystery of oh, sorry, I skipped something. So my first piece of evidence is that we don't know what happened before the Big Bang. This mystery implies that there must have been some unchanged changer that pushed everything else into place. Secondly, the natural curiosity of emergence and mind-body dualism both propose that humans may hold some divinity. The formal definition of emergence is coming into being or giving rise to. But in physics, emergence occurs when an entity is observed to have properties its parts do not have, or behaviors which emerge which only when parts interact in a wider whole. The ways Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young put it in Helplessly Hoping, they are one person, they are two together, two alone, they are three together, they are for each other, implying that in a romantic relationship, something greater than their two separate selves emerge. Two examples of emergence are termites and snowflakes. A termite cathedral is surely greater than the sum of its constituents. And in the wintertime, when water molecules get really cold, it forms complex symmetrical and fractal patterns. Surely this is greater than the sum of its constituents. But I think the most infamous and compelling case of emergence is life and humans' awareness of our existence. Each individual is a community of 30 trillion inanimate cells which form one unique mind. Similarly, the light cone suggests that the space you and I require to experience is singular. So surely my eyes or ears or brain is not singularly responsible for my perception of time. And in Christianity, it's sometimes preached that in order to join God after death, you have to ask Jesus into your heart. Since this is clearly not proposing that there's a little human inside the heart of every Christian, it agrees that we may have a dual self. Furthermore, we should establish human inferiority in this bizarre universe. Every human to grace this earth has likely wondered their purpose and thought that alone, and that thought alone is evidence that we are not superior in this universe or subordinate to the nature of reality. Humans have an inability to shift from the position of earthly observer to omnipotent or omniscient and all-powerful. As Dartmouth professor Marcelo Glaser once said in his online course, Question Reality, most religions assert that a godlike omnipotent entity would likely only exist in a separated realm where one would not be bound by space and time. To somehow become all-powerful, we would need to access all information that ever occurred, and to do so, we would have to be unbound by space and time. So this natural order and underlying substance to the universe must be uncaused, unchanging, and within a different realm. In 2 Corinthians 4:18, this force is mentioned, and it states, "So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary and what is unseen is eternal." Us humans are always changing, but as it's stated in like every religion, a God is eternal. Also, in The Little Prince, it says that only with the heart one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. In Hinduism and Buddhism, the third eye is said to represent enlightenment achieved through meditation. The third eye allows spiritual contemplation, self-reflection of our non-physical selves, and sight beyond the physical world. So having said all of that, I want to quickly emphasize the dangers of becoming power hungry and disrespecting this greater force, so to say. So in the beginning of the Bible, it asserts that evil originates from man's desire to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil and somehow maintain the secrets of the universe. And while that would be nice, again, that power is reserved for a being not of this space-time realm. When you look at current events and the motives behind evil acts, this notion makes so much sense that iniquity comes from a craving to be God. One example would be Hitler, whose motive was to gain power through anti-Semitism and land expansion. He put his desire for authority over millions of human lives. So how do we avoid evil? Well, of course, by going with the flow and embracing change, but also by living in harmony and recognizing the divinity in each other and the earth. Harmony is one of the four main principles of Taoism, and a characteristic of God. The Chinese concept of yin and yang describes nature and dualities with two opposite, complementary, and interdependent forces. In other words, two halves balancing each other that make a whole, which sounds kind of like emergence. Likewise, the Hindu Trinity is comprised of Brahma, who is the creator, Shiva the destroyer, and Vishnu the preserver, or the whole. This implies perfect balance. And then after every day in creation, in Genesis, God looked upon what he said, and he said, "It is good," and his creation was perfectly harmonious. That is until man sinned and threw earth way off balance and turned beauty into Taco Bell. And according to basic biology in Genesis 3:19, we are particles who are blessed with the great miracle of emerged consciousness, but whose bodies will soon return to the ground from which we grew. We are dust, and to dust we shall return. When we disregard this balance and the harmony and the divinity in others implemented by the nature of reality, everything hits the skids. 2 Timothy 2:3 talks about how people will only love themselves and money. They will have no love for others, and they will refuse to forgive anyone. Instead of loving God, they will love pleasure. And so I have some people hugging money, and when you put that over loving the earth, you get sadness. And astrophysicist Hubert Reeves once said that man is the most insane species. He worships an invisible God and destroys a visible nature, unaware that this nature that he's destroying is the invisible God he's worshiping. The best ways to practice balance are just to be good to one another in the earth. When you have a flexible attitude, humility, respect, compassion, empathy, and a true appreciation for others' potential and unique qualities, the world quite literally becomes a more beautiful place. I'm going to finish today by talking about beauty. We don't really know what beauty is. We just know that it's something that humans were programmed to recognize and appreciate. An experiment involving artwork was conducted where people were asked to observe sets of two very similar paintings and report which one they felt was more beautiful and meaningful. The difference in the paintings was that one was painted with intent and meaning, and the other one was an unoriginal imitation. So here I have Jackson Pollock on the right, that is an original, or on the left, that is an original painting. And then on the right, that is the replica. And a majority of the time, people were able to choose the painting that was full of intent. They chose that one as the more beautiful one. What is more, another study was conducted where fine art was placed in hospitals, and patients often reported feeling happier, less pain required less pain medication. And oftentimes we find things that are symmetrical and or follow patterns like the Fibonacci sequence to be beautiful because it implies safety and health. The Fibonacci sequence also goes by the name of the golden ratio or divine ratio, and it comes in many forms. Experts are puzzled as to why both animated and inanimate objects obey it. It's most easily identifiable in plants, and my favorite YouTuber math vlogger has a video named The Fabulous Fibonacci Flower Formula. And in it, he explains how the shape that plants take is the most efficient and conveniently the most beautiful. Take the sunflower, for example, and notice the symmetries. Similarly, a shape called the cardioid is seen all over nature. I figured out that the golden ratio spiral is just half of a cardioid. In another video by the math vlogger, he proves that the cardioid is just a 2 times table, suggesting that this design is inherent to mathematics. Here are some other places that the cardioid is seen in nature. The left is a cardioid seen in a cylindrical coffee cup from light reflecting. And on the right, we have a Fourier transform. This sounds confusing, but it's just a method of breaking a frequency into its pure constituents. When you graph it around a circle, when you graph a pure frequency around a circle and the beats per second matches the cycle per second, a cardioid appears. I also want to show you quick something I think is really cool. Okay. This is called the tangle of the Earth and Venus, and it shows here. It'll play for me. Okay, there we go. So the dot in the middle, that's of course the sun, and then the purple dot is the earth, and the tan dot is Venus. And as they tango around the sun, they created a cardioid at first, and then they go on to create this flower shape. And I think that's super neat. And so, where was I at? Okay. So people are attracted to beautiful things. People are attracted to love, and similarly to botanical growth and efficiency, take a look at the shape that water crystals take when exposed to positive and negative words and music. As you can see, the positive words and sounds result in beautiful symmetrical visuals, while the negative sounds and words show asymmetrical, almost disgruntled looking visuals. Additionally, positivity is definitely universal. Think about how dogs respond to happy tones and how plants grow in light and happy environments. This is a picture of my dog before going on a walk. So what is beauty? Beauty is innate and perhaps the fingerprint of the divine. When we get in a funk and we forget all of these intuitive values like harmony, compassion, and acceptance, we forget all about beauty and goodness. So to conclude my presentation today, I'll leave you with a call to action. It's time to get rid of arrogance or so-called God complexes and learn from this holy, celestial, and supremely good relationship between science and spirituality in order to enrich the relationships with and lives of others in the earth. Thank you.
Nice job, Emmy.
Thank you.
Now, will you put yourself back on the middle screen so they can ask you questions? But if they might refer back to a slide. And then how do you want them? Do you want them to raise their hands or put it in the chat?
Yeah, sure. Raising hands is good. And I see Miss Graber has her hand up.
I will unmute. Okay, I loved this presentation, and I want to say that I picked coming to this one because the topic interested me so much. So I would love to know, based on all of the research that you did and the way you connected so many different factors of life, has that strengthened your own spirituality, or has it led to you being more fractured or having more questions? Like, where has this brought you on your own journey with regard to spirituality?
It's definitely like caused me to question more, but I think that's just part of like the spiritual journey, I guess. Because it's growing and learning, and I don't know, I really appreciated learning about this because it also gave me a greater appreciation for my upbringing. And though I don't identify as Christian anymore, it gave me like the tool set for all of these things that I now know. So yeah, I guess that's where it puts me. It's made me a lot more grateful. Okay, who else has a question?
I do.
All right. Hello.
Hi, I'm Molly House, and I, first of all, just appreciate how your presentation taught me so much about your topic, because this is what I taught teachers to do. You did something called fast mapping, and you said a word, and then you gave us the definition right then and there. For me, at my maturity, you might have to do it a couple more times, but I tried to write it all down so it would make sense. And the number two thing was the examples that you, first, well, let me go back to one more thing. You opened it with your background, your church, you're this, you're that. And then as you continue to create your thesis, you could understand your growth personally. It was wonderful. Yeah. It was absolutely wonderful. And I loved the examples you chose for the everything.
Thank you.
And then when you make that cardioid Venus Earth going around, I'm like, I want that. I want it in the window.
And Molly personally knows Crosby, Stills, and Nash, so she probably really appreciated that one too.
All of them. I'm sorry, Casey. I'm sorry.
And Emily, I've been here so long that I know Molly's son. For God's sakes, I had him in class. Bye. I caught part of the presentation. I love the fact that you threw in the science.
Yeah.
I love it. You know what I think? You know, they always say in cancer research, if you have a positive outcome, a positive attitude, there might be a positive outcome. I love the example on the water and the different variations of the bonding angles in water. You may have a little topic here. If you'd actually study that in cancer research, you may end up with a huge area later on down the line. I'm serious about the attitude and overcoming disease, overcoming whether it's cancer, whatever. Seriously, I think there is some truth to that. Like barometric pressure affecting your knees and elbows and everything else. I do.
Yeah, definitely.
So good job. Very good.
Good to see you.
I think, yeah, I know. My God, this is crazy. My kids saw it. I just promoted your class, Miss Dunley. I had my 3 or 4 little kids in here for AP Chem, and they're like, "What's that?" I said, "Well, let's listen." So I promoted it for you.
I like
They're
that.
afraid to give a speech. I said, "Oh, you can hide behind a screen."
Emmy, that's a good topic to take on to if you want to do it next semester.
Yeah.
Like even before you get to college, have that
Great
kind of
thesis
basis.
in college.
Perhaps.
Well, I think that there's I'm Jane Rongerud. I'm the random parent participant. I teach city planning at Iowa State University, and I
Awesome.
myself am a qualitative researcher. So I want to say that I really appreciated that you started as qualitative researchers. We need to be aware of our own position and position ourselves in relation to our inquiry. So I really appreciate that you did that. You started out telling us about you and the questions. And as I was writing notes and comments, I appreciate that you addressed that. So, I was like, oh, well, what about other spiritual texts? Well, you talked about that. I have some suggestions of other ways that people have used quantum physics to explore some of these questions, and there's a huge literature there. So that's what I would say, really, I would hope that you would dive into and think about next, because there's a whole intersection where people are looking at quantum physics and trying to reshape how we understand reality. But and I think that you would find that useful and productive. And I also want to appreciate that you're like diving into the big questions, right? So that's like tremendous. That's bold. That's you really putting yourself out and recognizing that you have a voice and, important things to say about these topics that we don't have any answers to, but we certainly need more questions about. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And it's nice to meet you.
Yeah.
All right. Any more questions? All right.
Emmy, I want you to, will you share the one slide with me? Like just send it to me. It's the quote that you have on slide 34. I mean, not right now, just later. I'll forget if I don't.
Yeah, totally.
I love that. Yeah.
So I guess maybe just a final question. Could you restate your thesis? Because you were asking these big questions and you took us on a nice pathway through it, but I'm not sure, since I see that that's one of the questions in the form, I'm not sure that I could restate what your thesis is.
Yeah, so I think my main thesis was just that it's, you need to get rid of arrogance, learn from the holy celestial relationship between science and spirituality to enrich the relationships you have with others in the earth.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe you could type it in the chat too, or copy and paste it later and people will have access to that. Do we have any other questions or comments from anyone? Any of the students?
Emmy, I think you're gonna love the book The Color Purple next year because it's a lot about this stuff.
Really?
Like about spirituality and stuff. And I think my dad has a question.
Hi, not a question. I just wanted to say, great job. I do this now for a living, and I present via Zoom to my clients and prospects. And it's super hard to talk to slides and to keep your thoughts coherent as you're moving. And you did a great job particularly in light of the fact that you guys are in high school. So I'm super impressed. Better than a lot of the people that we pay to do this.
Thank you very much.
Well, that deserves a round of applause. Do it. You know how to do it. Round of applause.
I know that the people who have been audience members before, like I know Amber and Molly, we're always, Mr. Green, we're always so impressed by the children. They know so much and they're so professional and confident and clear, and watching their presentations is like the joy of the semester for me. Literal joy. And I bet Molly backs
You
me up
got
on
it.
that. Well, thank you. I'm going to stop recording because I have to get ready for hunters now. So thanks everybody for coming, and
I really appreciate it.
Looking
Great
forward
job,
to
Emmy.
seeing what you do next.
Thanks.
Yeah. Super excited.
Miss
Yeah.
Stanley. I have a question for you. Sorry, this is very unprofessional. Can
Wait,
you
let me
get rid
stop
of
the thing. 1 second.
Oh, okay.